working in the spirit of the Golden Empire. This is 17 News at 5:30.
New at 5:30, the Bakersfield sound evolved from a group of artists perfecting a West Coast version of country music. Buck Owens, Merle Haggard, Red Simpson, singer-songwriters delivering a raw, stripped-down, vibrant tone to their songs.
They use the standard instruments, drums, piano, bass, and the guitar. Bakersfield was also home to a guitar maker, known in the industry as a luthier. Seemingly on the brink of a music revolution during the 1960s, he hit a few bumps in the road. This luthier's story begins with a block of wood and a dream. Tonight, the success, the struggles, the sounds of Simmy Mosley.
Simmy Mosley, first of all, good Christian man.
He was, what, about 6'4"?
He loved his guitars. He loved his guitar.
The Mosrite guitar was a guitar that was built in Bakersfield.
You know, I think Simmy Mosley had a real flair for design.
And that's the first time I ever saw that. I went, whoa.
It's a one of a kind. It was custom made for us.
Custom made by Simmy Mosley. Growing up in Bakersfield, Simmy and his brother Andy had an obsession with guitars. A prodigy in the early 50s, working for Rickenbacker Guitars in Los Angeles. Once he began to fiddle around with his own designs on the side, he was fired. Then the teenager took his creative talents back home to Bakersfield.
He was building guitars in a shed behind his mom's house, and it was right across from Standard School. Turning raw wood into fine crafted instruments.
Just trial and error. He tried to make a guitar that he wanted to play.
By 1952, friend and advisor Reverend Ray Boatwright provided a small loan to Simmy and his brother to begin a business.
Because it's half Mosley and half Boatwright, so it turned into a Mosrite.
Mosrite of California is born. Boatwright introduced Simmy Mosley to Joe Maphis, a country pickin' guitarist with a huge following on television.
Joe Maphis was his hero.
And Joe was my godfather.
The quick fingers of Joe Maphis inspired a new generation of guitarists, including a young Brian Longbeck and Larry Kid Collins. Maphis was known as the king of strings.
Lightning fast.
Mosley emerged from his modest factory in 1954 with a double-neck masterpiece.
So Mosrite guitars came out of those double-neck guitars that he built for Joe and myself.
Collins remembers receiving his first Mosrite double-neck.
They presented me with one on television. And, of course, it just, what can I say?
Once Mosrite got going in the early 60s in Bakersfield, all of a sudden it was like black gold, Texas tea.
At that time, he was building hundreds of guitars a month.
The Bakersfield guitar maker was making noise in the industry.
You could go out and pick tomatoes or work at Mosrite.
Simmy Mosley strung together enough music industry relationships to gain widespread exposure in the 1960s.
Even with major acts playing his guitars and playing them on TV, it's a tough business.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Mosley entered into an endorsement deal with lead guitarist Noki Edwards of the famed instrumental group The Ventures.
The first time that I ever saw a Mosrite Ventures model guitar on the back of a Ventures album, I thought, that is a cool-looking guitar.
From the stage to the covers of multi-million selling albums, Mosrite was seen and admired worldwide.
The Ventures were very, very popular in Japan.
Many of the original Venture models produced in Bakersfield were shipped overseas. Mosley was riding a wave of incredible success. Even though the Ventures deal ended in 1967, many popular artists were jumping on the Mosrite bandwagon. Glenn Campbell, the Ohio players Leroy Sugarfoot Bonner, psychedelic rockers Iron Butterfly, and John Entwistle of The Who, all strapped on Mosrites. The B-52's Ricky Wilson, Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, all played the Bakersfield instruments. Sitcom heartthrob Greg Brady even went with a green Mosrite for one episode. Johnny Ramone introduced Mose Wright to the punk rock scene, a relationship that lasted for more than 30 years.
After you've used a Mose Wright for so long, you don't really want to use anything else because they're so easy to play.
Promoting his product came easy to Mosley. Getting his product to consumers proved more difficult. Mosley experienced failed distribution deals, questionable partnerships. Set in his ways, he refused to go in with Sears and Roebuck. The Mose Wright business model hit a sour note.
When you don't care about the money, when you just care about guitars, and there's not like a giant profit in every guitar.
I love making those guitars. And he said, Brian, money doesn't mean anything to me.
He was a musician and an artist. He wasn't the best of businessmen.
His business deals maybe didn't make the best decisions on those.
And he actually could have used some help in that area.
There was no love for Simmy Mosley on Valentine's Day, 1969. The company was in bankruptcy. From guitars to office supplies, Mose Wright went on the auction block.
Simmy Mosley was trying to fire up his factory again, was looking for investors.
He produced a pair of guitars specifically for the Buckaroos.
And he built this and gave it to Buck and our guitar player, Don Rich. Buck said, I told Simmy that we'd put it on Hee Haw.
Don Rich used the guitar for a half season on Hee Haw, but it wasn't enough. Mosley had other plans to resurrect his business. Mose Wright of California was going on the road. He left the streets of Bakersfield and moved out to Pumpkin Center in 1970. With new investors, Mosley briefly set up shop in Carson City, Nevada.
And he was building guitars in Arizona, and he got in an automobile accident there. It kind of slowed him down.
The car rolled over 5 times. My leg went out the window, and it was actually destroyed. So that looked like that ended our trip to Jonas Ridge, you know. But thank the Lord, he spared my leg.
Jonas Ridge, North Carolina. A news story from 1983 documented Brian Longbeck's visit.
Simmy's guitars are this it's like having a Volkswagen and a Rolls Royce. This is a Rolls Royce right here. He said, Brian, I want you to learn how to make these guitars. I said, okay.
And you go around your head like so.
2 years later, the property, tools, wood, and guitars all went up in flames. 40 years making music, sharing his craft, building and losing a guitar manufacturing empire that began in Bakersfield.
I saw Simmy. I had come to Arkansas to see him. 1992. So I was there helping him out, making some guitars, and he said, Brian, I want to show you something. And he had it back in a room in the dark on a guitar stand. He says, Brian, come here. He says, I got something I want to give you.
The 40th anniversary Mose Wright, 1952 to 1992.
As I was in Japan with a friend of mine on tour, and I got the message, Simmy had passed.
A few weeks after Mosley was diagnosed with cancer, he left this world. From Nashville to Norway, Bakersfield to Japan, Simmy Mosley will be remembered many ways. Once a millionaire, a defeated entrepreneur, a man of conviction, a guitar designing icon. Today, Mose Wright guitars have a legendary appeal among musicians.
When you have a good instrument, you keep it your whole life. You pass it on to your kid.
Where do you start? I mean, he was just a genius when it comes to guitar.
I miss you, Simmy Mosley.
And a special thanks to our promotions coordinator, Steve Womack. He wrote and produced this story. He took the ball and he ran with it and he scored big. Look for more on the Mose Wright guitar in an upcoming installment of Kern County In Depth in a couple of weeks.
Incredible. I did not know about the Mose Wright guitar.
It's a well-kept secret.
Yeah, and that incredible legacy.
The untold story has now been told.
Yeah, wow.